Hi, we
Hello,
can see
hello.
you.
I'm
Hello, how
well,
are
thank
you? I
you.
can see your
Hello.
key.
Awesome. Okay. Hi, everyone. I just have a very short insert today before the actual class gets in motion. So I am Tshegofatso Moatshe. I am currently employed at the Auditor General of South Africa. I recently signed off, so I'm on the other side now, and I wrote my APC in 2022. Very much excited to be a part of this today, just to give you some of my insights on how I went about preparing for the APC. Uh, Thank you for the hands. And yeah, just to give you a little bit of insight in the different ways you can approach this task, as well as many of your other tasks, right? So that is just my introduction. I don't know if you guys still want to see my face, or I can actually just speak over. But one of the first things that I would like to share with you guys is what I call a planning document. I'm not too sure if you guys have an idea of how a planning document would look like. This is not just for this particular task, it would be for all of your tasks as you approach your APC. I think a lot of the issues that we have is that we get the information on the day, we have prepared for a couple of days, and now where do we start, right? Which is very much important when you go into an 8-hour exam. So quickly, I'm going to share what I call a on the day planning document. I will then be able to also share it with Tandeka if she pleases to, but you will make it the way you want it to be. It's basically giving you direction of where to start when you go about your APC. You will just let me know if you are able to see it. I'm going to share it just right now. Mm, just let me know if you're able to see it. Someone can
Yes, we
just
can
say
see it.
yes.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So this is what I call my on the day planning document. It is then just a Word document. As you can see, it has absolutely nothing on there, but you would have to print it out and give you some sort of structure. So as we prepare on the day, you get your information on the day, and you open your planning document, right? Um, the first column, I'm not too sure if you can see it, but basically the first column, which is under one, it says IOD, right? You will then take your particular task that you have opened. They said so you have to respond to an email regarding this particular task, and now you go and write the information of the day. Task A, information on the day says this is what we need to do, right? And this is where you link your information on the day to then your pre-release information. So we say, how has this issue evolved in the context of the PRI and the IOD? So you get the task and you identified certain triggers when you were doing your PRI. Now the information on the day comes, and yes, you identified the correct triggers. At this point, we are ready. We know how to identify triggers and the relevant ones. And now we say, oh, actually, this is how it has developed in the information on the day. So how has it now moved from the trigger that I've seen, and what meat have they then added onto it, and what is the context now when we get the information of the day related to the pre-release information that is now under two. Then we go to you plan your task, right? So, what are they now asking with the information that you researched before those points, the idea or the expectation that you have brought? Has it been met? If you thought the task will go a particular way, it actually has manifested in that way in your questions. Great. Now we plan the task, right? How is it? How was it before? As we said, pre-release information on the day. Now, what is being asked at this point? What are my expectations that I need to give the marker on the other side with regards to this particular task? And you go about and plan. Do they want an email, right? So you go there to the format. Who am I responding to? Am I responding to the board? Am I responding to the CEO? Am I responding to the CFO? Who and what is my audience? And this will tell you the depth of the response that you need to give. If it's someone who is fairly unfamiliar with, for example, in this task, revenue, the marketing director or the marketing manager, um, well, that's Jim, but actually the audience here is the CEO. Do they know revenue intensely, or are they not too familiar with the particular ins and outs of IFRS 15? You're right there, and this will also direct your depth in your task, right? And this is under the planning of the task. Then when it comes to 4, you have planned what you're actually going to speak to, how you're going to respond, who is your audience, what are the particular questions that you need to answer as then the required. And as you write, you tick off. Have I then wrote the supposed email? Yes. The audience is a CEO? Yes. Did I cover what they actually asked me? So this is very important, where you don't really get confused as you are typing and you go on and you remember they asked this and you don't really know if they asked this, or you don't remember how you're supposed to respond to this. This planning document here will then give you that satisfaction and really calm your nerves on the day to say, yes, I've answered this. They wanted this. They wanted it in this manner. They wanted it for this particular person. And then you tick all the covered aspects. And here, when it comes to your time, at the very beginning, before you even start and you know the time is ready or it's time to start, you then plan your tasks, right? In the sense that you'll go through all that is required, you'll go through the information on the day, and you will know how to, well, task A I can do in about an hour. Task B, I can do in an hour and a half. I have 10 minutes and so forth. So on the day, you generally have 8 hours to write your paper. The way I had previously gone about it is that I'm going to give myself an hour to read and to plan. And it sounds like a lot, but in this hour, I am reading for understanding. I am also planning properly so that when I do start my tasks, I'm not here or there. I know exactly what I'm doing in which task. I then know also the time that I've allocated for each task. So when I go out and start the task, I'm not, there are no surprises in between there. I know exactly what's happening. And the planning of this happens in this 1 hour. I then told myself, you know what, I'm going to give myself 6 hours to the tasks, right? So I'll either divide through the number of the task, if that's how you want to do it, or like I suggested, through the depth or the quantity or how big the task is. If you're going to divide a task by 6 hours, go ahead. But if you think some of the tasks require less time or more time, go ahead. This is all part of your 1 hour planning. And then I then told myself, you know what? After the 2 hours, the 1 hour I've read and planned, 6 hours for the task, an hour I'm going to look through my work and check that I've actually identified the gaps. If I closed any gaps, if I had gaps earlier on, for example, I took too much time and I needed to move on to the next task, I have an hour to then go and wrap up the task that I haven't. It's very important to just preview your work before you submit. This is a very big exam. So you don't want to give half-hearted answers where you do have time left over to just wrap everything up. In this hour, you can also take time to stretch. I know it's very important. It's an 8-hour exam. So if you have allocated that in this time, you're going to take a quick bite, 30 minutes. You're going to take your lunch break. You go ahead and you come back. You need to take a walk. You go ahead. You know that you have an hour to close gaps, and or you can also do any lunch breaks in between there. So this is my on the day planning. And how I motivate myself in 2022, that at the end I wrote myself a message. So I'm Christian, and I said, I trust in God, I'm trusting myself. You can do this, you deserve this. And in this case, you will say, congratulations for passing APC 2024. You can even write your title in the header there and say, so and so CASA 2024. So this is just the planning on the day, my approach to all the tasks and not just this auditing task that I really do think is important when you plan for your exam. That's it. Do I have any questions so far? Okay, nothing from the side. Okay, so yes, Bongi, go ahead.
How can I split the 6 hours?
How would you split the 6 hours?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So I did a little bit allude to that, but what I said, ke gore ne, if it makes sense, we all have our different discretions. Through the hour that you are reading through the actual information on the day, and you are identifying how it pieces through from your pre-release information. You read the info, then you look at the task that's expected for you, and you can gauge gore, actually this is probably going to take 15 minutes. This is likely to take 30 minutes. This is likely to take an hour, right? So how the basis points of how I'd done it before, because obviously in before you get to your APC, you've been doing your programs. Before that, Nikita 6 hours divided by the tasks, right? So 6 times 6, 360 divided by 8 tasks. I then approximate that maybe I'm going to take 40 minutes for each task. But as went on towards the final exam, I realized, Hore, it's not a blanket approach. You can't do a blanket approach. You have to read and plan at the beginning and then correctly allocate the time there. So if we have a task that you know is going to take an hour and a half, right? Put the hour and a half there, but in such a point that your 6 hours, you don't take more than your 6 hours. Allocate enough time to each task that you know is sufficient to complete the task, but make sure it was within the 6 hours. I hope that helps. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're very much welcome. Okay, so I'm also being asked, how long did it take you to complete the document on the day in total? I'm thinking you're talking about the planning document. So again, so at the beginning of the document, I'm just gonna reshare it. Let's see. I think I have closed it. Okay, but I will share it with everyone so you have an idea what's going on. So I had allocated 1 hour. So we started at 9 o'clock. From 9 o'clock until 10 o'clock, I'm planning. And in my planning, there's no distraction. So I'm strictly planning. When I'm planning, I'm reading the information on the day and then I'm allocating. Unfortunately, or it's kind of expected that we need to increase our reading pace and we need to read for understanding and know what's happening there. So as you are reading, don't read because you need to read. Don't browse through. Read for understanding. Be intentional as you are reading and make the notes that you need to make within that hour so that as you go through the task, yes, as you actually answer the task, sometimes you see something that you have missed. There's no need to panic over that, but because you are sure that at the beginning you read for understand, you read for planning, you were piecing things together in your file, and that's important why you need to know your file, and you need to know the information in the pre-release to a point that you know, okay, this trigger comes here. You are then summarizing them together and bringing it together. So yeah, you must stick to the 1 hour that you've given yourself to do that. But because you are reading for understanding and you also know your file so well, it's not too far-fetched over there. Okay, more questions. Say, do you pre-populate the framework with PRI information during day 5, then update with the IOD information on the day? So the way you the way you document your file, you have a file. Um, at this point, you know how to have a file. You have your file. Maybe in your file, you have for each task, you will have what you call a context or an index. And to understand that in this task, I have my research, I have maybe my the standards that would relate to this particular task, any other information I know that I would need. And this is task or trigger 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have that on your context page. And then on the day you read your trigger and you say, you read your, information on the day and you know, oh, trigger 4. I go to trigger 4, I open my file, more trigger 4, I've written these things 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not pre-populated, that planning document. As you go back onto the planning document, I think I need to actually share it now. Just give me a second. Okay. Okay. So then on the day, this column here, I don't really know why it's shifted. Maramo 1, when I share it, so on Kamo 1, we say this is the information on the day, right? This is what you're reading from this task, information on the day. Kamo 2, you say, how has the issue evolved? And this is where you bring in your PRI, pre-release information, Kamo 2, to match it up to IOD. You can't pre-populate this because you don't know task A, it's a which the information on the day for task A, GFing. So rather don't pre-populate it. This will just allow you to also bring in that information together for that task. So I would not recommend pre-populating it. You just have your actual plan, which is already structured the way this is. And as you go through, you can write notes, including your PRI and your IOD. But as I said, you know your file back to front. So as you say what the context has evolved in, you know, oh, task A has evolved into this way. If this is what I saw in my PRI, now it's on my IOD. It's now evolved into something else. Yep. I hope that answers that question. You are welcome. Just trying to open up my, okay. More questions. So Rachel Maseko says, what is the in the first hour? What are you trying to get out of the first read? Do you need to read to be able to answer, or do you need to just know what is in there and then plan time? When do you go back and do the task? Do you read again? So in my hour, I think you'll also be able to make this unique to yourself. I know that I have 8 hours. So how I said is 1 hour plan, 6 hour allocate, 1 hour leeway. So close gaps, or a break. In my hour, I'm reading. And when you say, do you read to be able to answer? I'm reading with understanding. I would assume that if you are reading with understanding, you are reading to be able to answer. You need to understand what you are reading. You can't just be browsing through. You need to understand, how is this, the information, how is this task totally different? And when I'm reading with my understanding, I then am, in a way, reading to be able to answer. And from there, I can then plan my expectations table through reading to understand. So you're reading to understand. So when you do your task in the 6 hours, you're able to answer, but you're not reading to answer at that point because you're still planning. I don't know if that's okay. Okay, or to know what is in there and then plan the time. So the planning of the time will come after you have read. You read, you understand the task, then you plan the time you're going to allocate to the task within the 6 hours. But how did I manage to write in 6 hours? What did you do to prepare for this? It's hard finishing writing in 7.5 hours for me. I'm starting to think perhaps I'm doing something wrong. No, but there's always room to improve. So one of the points I said is, I'm not saying it was a smooth paper, ne? I'm also saying I knew my file very well. And I wasn't it's not obsessing with the research. I knew if I'm opening my file, I'm going to trigger 1, I know what is within trigger one. I go back to my file if there is what do you call an area where I'm not understanding or I'm not too clear or I need to refresh. That was the main thing for me. I knew my file quite well. And knowing your file, understanding your file, and then incorporating how it has evolved on the day is what's really going to help you. In those 5 days that you have to prepare your file, you're not just preparing a file to prepare a file and to say, I have a file. You're preparing with the sense that you know what's happening in this in this with this information or in this company. You know certain things that are likely to happen. Yes, you've got the if question going on there. On the day, it's probably going to evolve. But you plan and you understand your file so that on the day when you read this trigger, you can identify, you're not going back to your file to re-understand what's in your file. You're just putting it together to see how your file is going on from now on. Then Mickey says, hi, Sisi, which tasks did you start with? Long accounting tasks overwhelm me and I don't finish them because I do them uh, last. So which tasks did I start with? Yo, during our journey, it's a hard one, right? Because sometimes people will say, start with the easier one or the one are more comfortable with to build some confidence. Others will start with the most challenging one, so you get it out of the way. In this case, I would say, I think starting with the one that is going to boost my confidence and knowing that I can do that fast is the best thing that I've done lately. So when I go through my planning and I know this task, I know this one, I know this auditing. I am confident in this auditing question or task. I am confident in how I'm probably going to answer it. I'm going to get this over out of the way. Yes, I allocated 20, 30 minutes. It'd be great if I can do it in 20. I'm confident in my answer. I'm done. Then I'll go to a more challenging one, right? Because now I've got the confidence boost um, that I need. And according to the time that I've allocated to that particular task, I think I have 45 minutes, Zoyenza accounting in 45 minutes. Hopefully I still have the 10 minutes from the auditing question. So when I circle back at the end, I can put it back into that accounting question. But building the confidence at the beginning, I think helped me. Then also right after I build my confidence, I'm going into the tackling task. So you don't want to approach a very hard task at the beginning because it might take away time from you answering the remaining tasks, but you definitely don't want to do it at the end because you are now in panic mode if you're doing it at the end. So finding a balance in your planning to say, okay, number one is this one. Number two, you can even write on your IOD to say, okay, I'm going to do task one now. This will be task one. This will be task two. You can mix it around. You don't have to start at the beginning. You don't have to start at the end. Yeah. Okay, the next question from Patricia says, what happens during planning when you realize that the issue involved on the day and you do not specifically prepare for that specific issue? How do you prepare yourself mentally and ensure that you will stick to your 6 hours? So preparing for preparing for the unprepared. Maybe speaking to your mental and the emotional aspect. All of us here have gone through undergrad, we've done postgrad, we have written ITC. We know what's happening. We do know enough to be at this point, definitely. And remembering that you've done so many things before this, you've gone through a degree, you've gone through honors, you've gone through ITC, is really one of the things that will keep you going. And it's hard to learn, but sticking to the basics that you've known and the ones those things are actually going to help you even when it turns around. So, for example, in 2022, there was a question around, it was a financial management question. I think they were looking for the break even. And how but Giti, break even, I saw it when, right? But in that moment, I could not afford to be shaken. Yes, I was shaken, or I couldn't afford to actually ignore this and go forward. I needed to kick into the things that I knew. So what is break even? How do I calculate break even? Do I have the inputs here in front of me to then tackle this break even question as far and as wide as I can? Am I using the information now on the day and incorporating it into my response? So the best way that I tackled that was to say, there's a lot of things that I know up until this point. Let me use what I know rather than panicking maybe that I didn't really prepare for this. There'll always be some unprepared aspect of a paper. But what do I actually know that has brought me up to this point, and how can I use those with the information that I have, information on the day, matching it with what they've asked for to respond? That is, yeah, I think that should cover that. Ooh, there's a lot of questions. I don't know, Taneka, do I still have time? And okay, the other one says, hi, Tshegofatso. Is it okay to read task by task rather than allocate a full hour to reading alone? So the reason I did the reading at the beginning, it was helping me to plan. So I can't say yes or no, because in my planning, as soon as I got to that task, I was able to start. I didn't have to reread, rematch with my information from the PRI, re-strategize in terms of the expectation table. That was the reason I planned at the beginning. So I knew my roadmap. If you want to read and task by task and answer, you know, that's sometimes where panic comes in. That's where you could move away from what you the is required, or you move away from your roadmap. So it's for me, I wouldn't advise that. I did want to plan at the beginning to know, as when I get to task C, I know task C is looking for this. I wasn't comfortable with saying, okay, it's now time for task C. Let me read task C and then respond to task C. So we all of us work differently. So personally, that wouldn't have worked for me. But what is the expectation again? Expectation table again. So your expectations table would be how the points that, simply put, these are the points that you must cover based on the task that's been asked. So make sure if they are asking for inputs relating maybe to the revenue, like the question task D, there he said, what are the concerns? So what aspects of the concerns are there? Remind yourself, this could be a concern. How do I detail the concern? Do I just state that it's a concern? So what is the marker expecting to see as they go through my responses would be the expectation table. The actual question, the audience, the context, well, that's the context, the audience, and then the format for that question would be a lot of the expectations. Okay. I think that's
Yeah, I
all.
think that was
Yes.
that was the last question. And you speed talk. I think it helped a bit. But yeah, it did help a bit. But maybe even before the team, the candidates follow up on us, just drop the document to my team so that we can upload it before the end of the session. I think a couple of candidates have asked for it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think always templates have been our comfort zone. So I think please do share it. We don't want to cause unnecessary panic.
Okay.
If you've started, they can start from here. So please do share. But I think I've already I saw Fedi's already here. I would not want him to take you past midnight. Just gonna
Yes.
hand over back to him. But otherwise, I did go through the chat. That was the last question, but you can also go through them, the last couple of one, and if there are any, you can just quickly just respond on the chat. Thank you so much, Tshegofatso. I think that was very informative. I really like the planning part and just making sure that you cover all bases. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, so enjoy the rest of the session. I will answer any other questions and definitely drop the planning document to you and your team. Thanks.
Thank you.